And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ and Rhett with you. Bucky is he is out. He is at the HBCU Bowl, so he's doing some good work there and checking out some of those players. And we'll have an update for him when we get him back on the show. But today, Rhett, it's a pretty simple one. We've got a new mock draft that's out, which I will say I am excited because I thought the reaction to the first one somewhat tame.
Subdued.
Somewhat timid, yeah.
So much so that, you sent out a post last night where you had a member of the household, kind of wondering, like, Dad, are we going to up the ante here a little bit? Are we gonna put in some rage bait into this?
I've never heard that term
before. It up?
I guess that's a term I had never heard. It struck me as so funny. My son he's 17 years old, and this is what happens. So give you a little peek behind the curtain. It is incredibly long days trying to get all these players watched to get ready for the combine. And so to keep from going crazy, I can't just sit in my office and watch the video. I end up having to move around. So one day I'll just go out to the family room and I'll just set everything up out there and sit in the chair and then do it there. But then we have another room, kind of a living room area, which is where he plays the Xbox. So I was like, I got to get a different view for the day. So I went and sat in there. So he's just playing. He's playing college football with his friend online or whatever. And I go, well, I just knocked out the mock draft, got that one done. He goes, you put some good rage bait in there? I was like, wait, what? I need him to start marketing for me. I was like, no, I don't think I did, not on purpose, at least.
Well, surely as we get closer and as more people get to consume this mock draft, which of course is out now on NFL.com, that's kind of what social media is one of the things it's known for these days is rage.
So I was on the lookout for rage. My rage radar was up.
Yeah,
so when I looked at some of the comments, I saw some rage. I was like, apparently there was some rage bait in there. Didn't even know it.
Let's get it.
You ready to rip into it?
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to.
I'll give you the first five with a quick thought on the first five, and then I'll open it up to you to give me some feedback here. First off, the Tennessee Titans first pick. I was talking to some folks around the league and trying to canvas just like your opinions, guys who know people in the decision-making process there, and not with direct information, but the same theme kept coming up over and over and over again, which was, this is new. A lot of times we hear new regime accompanied with a new quarterback, but this was the feedback I was like, look, we're not completely sold slam dunk quarterbacks here in this draft, which has been pretty universal across the board. They're going to have time. They're going to get time to eventually get their quarterback. And with a plethora of needs, like, do you really want to look back and say your first pick you had to replace a year later or 2 years later? Like, let's just park one in the fairway here. Let's just get the best player available, and then they can, hunt for a quarterback in the next couple of years. But they're where they are in their process. That was the feedback. So boom, I pump in Abdul Carter, and I'll kind of give you the lowdown on these first five, Red, and then you can come back in on them. So next, Cleveland. Now this was, again, mock drafts, doing it from talking to people, using my ears, was okay. They need a cheap quarterback. Deshaun Watson he's not playing. That whole thing's a mess, and all the money committed there. I had previously put them without a quarterback because the Kirk Cousins connection was Stefanski, and then that could make sense. They wouldn't have to pay Kirk Cousins much, but this was more like, their roster with where it is, and if they're not going to trade Myles Garrett, there's no guarantees they're going to be up here again. This was a playoff team 2 years ago. They just need they need an upgraded quarterback. Can they get somebody? This was the phrase that was used. Can they get Bo Nix, style upside with the player? And I think absolutely Cam Ward can eventually get to, where Bo Nix has already gotten to with the Denver Broncos. So it's a cheap quarterback, makes sense. The Giants, this was a simple, you just watched a Super Bowl with an electric player that used to wear your uniform, playing for your rival. And this feels like trying to right a wrong to some degree of like, hey, while we're still trying to win and we need to win, we go get Matt Stafford in a trade, which I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that rumor is definitely floating around as a possibility around the league. You go get Matt Stafford. Now you get Travis Hunter to provide some excitement wherever you want to play him, offense, defense. He's an electric player. The Patriots, I could see them as a trade down candidate. Again, a team that needs a lot, a team that has to upgrade the offensive line. I think there's kind of, maybe you could even slide back a few picks and still get an offensive lineman. I just don't do trades this early on in the process, so didn't want to do that. And then Jacksonville kicked around a lot of different ideas for them. I just ended up settling on Mason Graham. It just, again, new regime coming in there, and it just feels like a fairway pick. So those are my first five, Rhett.
I love it. And I think the more that we look at the Tennessee Titans and where they are, the more that Abdul Carter makes complete sense right here. Go get a win right now. I mean, like, this is a surefire, impactful player that you're going to get with the number 1 pick. You're going to team him up there. It's probably going to make Harold Landry better on the other side. You've got the 2 beasts on the interior, and Simmons and Devondre Sweat, who played really well last year. Like, now all of a sudden, like, you've got a unit, like, you could probably win some games with right there up front with that group. That feels like, all right, we're going to continue to throw some resources, even though we've got some good players up there. Let's continue to make that and build that position of strength. Again, similar to the way that the reigning Super Bowl champions have done. Makes a ton of sense. Cam Ward, I totally get it. So I guess he's only going to be mad at the Titans then. Since
He came out there and said he's going to have it against everybody who doesn't pick him.
So that does make a lot of sense. We're one for limiting anger in the world, and that feels like you've done that right there. He's only going to be upset at the Titans.
Yeah, you know what's hilarious, by the way, is that you'll watch NFL games during the season, and you'll see, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who can tell you the names of all the receivers that are ahead of him, and he was disrespected. And then you hear other people talk about, the group was the Brady 6 or however many quarterbacks.
Yep, 6.
You know what you don't hear about? The every year when you're in the combine and 50 players you end up talking to say, "Oh, anybody that passes on me, you're going to regret it." And those guys that don't end up being any good, that have promised the league that they would be scorned,
I don't hear about that.
Don't hear those stories anymore. As if it's the only time that's ever happened, is those players that hit it big.
Yeah, for sure. And then quickly on Travis Hunter, I totally understand that selection there. But I would also say, like, look, you've had Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders attached in your top 50, right? I believe at 10 and 11. Would certainly understand if that's the way the Giants choose to go, is to go get a quarterback there. Especially as like you look further and look, we've all heard the Matthew Stafford rumors. Certainly, we also look back at how dang close the Rams were to playing a Super Bowl. They are really close. Do they want to really start over at quarterback? I feel like is a legitimate
question. They could have nipped that in the bud, though. They could have nipped that conversation right in the bud, right when they, at the end of the season, when they were given the opportunity to say he's not going anywhere. Never heard those words.
And as it stands now, would certainly love to see Travis Hunter at times with Malik Neighbors. Would certainly love to see him.
Think about that if you're a Giants fan and the pain and anguish you just had watching the Eagles, and now you come there and you got your first mini camp, and it's Matthew Stafford throwing the ball to a little bit to Travis Hunter and a lot to Malik Neighbors, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're back.
Well, and I mean, the fan apathy certainly set in there, and apathy quickly turned to anger, with the Saquon Barkley thing. So you're right there. You know what? At number 4, don't even mess around with the trades. That's like the most sensical pick in the entire draft.
They need offensive line, and again, it's like you can look at. I kind of come back to the Chargers thing last year. The Chargers, remember last year? It's like they could tight end, they could take a receiver, they could do that. It's like, we're going to take the best offensive line.
Go make that unit better.
Just take him. Yeah.
They got to have it. Love Mason Graham there as well. Just an impactful player that I don't know that we've really seen, on the interior. I know they tried it with Eric Armstead, Calais Campbell before that. And this feels like a nice homegrown way to not spend $100 million on a free agent defense.
Can I give you my thought on Mason, though, is that he is one of my candidates. And again, I have him highly, highly rated in my top 50. He is one of the candidates to keep an eye on in the spring, who can take on some water in the spring, because he's not going to be long. He's going to get measured. You're going to see he's got short arms. He doesn't have a great body compared to some of these other guys you're going to look at in this class. He doesn't really pass the eye test. And trust me, I know it firsthand, because I went and saw him play live, and I watched warmups, and I went, oh my gosh, I am way too high on this kid.
Yeah.
I did not know. I thought it was something. And then I watched the game, and I was like, no, he's good. He's fine. But it's not going to be, he's not made for the spring.
No, that's a good point. That's a good way to put it. We have those every year.
And by the way, I almost feel like this is where the fun starts, and that's why it's time for the lead block presented by T-Mobile for Business. Football needs a network willing to go the extra yard. So do you. Go further with T-Mobile for Business. And this is where we get to the Raiders, where I think now it's like being in Los Angeles and the freeways can go in 8 different
8 different
directions,
directions,
and it
sure.
kind of changes what happens from here going
Yeah.
forward. I did the same thing I did in the first one. I put Shedeur Sanders there. Chip Kelly coming in there. You think about Chip Kelly, the offense they ran, kind of a run heavy offense at Ohio State, which people don't think of because of all the receivers. They ran the football well there. They are
Yes.
committed to it. They're going to play with tight ends. It's not, and Chip even, there was an article about this where Chip even talked about this is not his first iteration of offense that he introduced.
That's right.
When he was in the NFL. So it's a little more physical approach, but then an emphasis on decision making at quarterback. And I think Shedeur, accurate, good decision maker. They're going to be out there and playing 12 personnel. I think he, for someone who played in like a spread setup at Colorado, I think Shedeur, he fits that style. Let's work on getting the ball out a little bit quicker. But that's who I have at 6.
And look, and that is that is a sexy pick right there. I mean, it feels like there's a marriage of philosophy and like style and like edge, and it all kind of fits right there with the Raiders. I could certainly see that. I could certainly see them, wanting to, again, kind of follow suit with the Patriots and continue to stack on the offensive line. I could see that. I don't know if there's a player that fits that bill. Kelvin Banks, probably the next one, probably a little high for an interior player like Membu, but we'll, or from Alabama, Booker. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a fun one. That's a one we're going to see a lot over the course of the next couple of weeks. I do feel like the one thing that we feel pretty good about is that they're not going to go get Tyler Warren at number 6. So,
yeah. Or are they? Let's just go 13 personnel. Let's cook. Let's cook. All right. Next, I had, speaking of Tyler Warren, again, I think the second time in a row going to the Jets. When I was looking at the Jets stuff, I'm just looking at them, and from last year, I was pulling up their numbers here. So 31st rushing and yards per game last year offensively, tied for 24th points per game. And I'm looking at what they have, and you're going to have to make over the receiver room a little bit because you're going to have all the Rodgers friends of Aaron are going to be gone. So but I'm sitting there going, okay, well, you need a receiver and you need to help the run game. Well, the backs aren't the issue. I think they've got 3 quality NFL backs.
Oh yeah.
So, and the offensive line, I think they've made some improvements there. They need to stay healthy, obviously.
Sure.
But I'm like, who helps both? Like, who's a guy that can come in here and help the run game as well as give you another weapon in the passing game? And I'm like, that's Tyler Warren, man. He helps both the run game and the pass game.
And look, they have not had major production at the tight end spot in a while. Right. And it just, and look at what, you go back to where Aaron Glenn comes from in Detroit. Look what Sam Laporta did for that offense in Detroit too. A little bit different players here, but Laporta can't do everything that Warren does, but
it's a bite your kneecaps type pick too.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
If you're trying to instill some culture and some toughness and some edge and some, like foundational type building there in that franchise, that's a winner pick at 7.
Yeah, so that's why I went there.
Yeah,
Carolina, I even mentioned this in the blurb. They're a prime trade candidate as well. The nice thing, it sucks when you have a lot of needs on your team. The nice thing is you can afford to slide around and move around a little bit because you're still going to get somebody that's going to help you out.
Right, you're not trying to drop in a championship team player.
I think with them, I think trying to again find guys that have won. I think when you've had a team that hasn't won a lot lately, I do think there is something to that. Bryce has been through the fire a little bit, but he came out of it stronger. He's got a winning background, winning pedigree. Now we go get somebody on the other side of the ball here in Jalen Walker, who's won a bunch, who's dynamic and explosive, a versatile piece there. I think it kind of gives him a chess piece, for that group, and get Derek Brown back healthy. This defense could take a major step forward next year.
Yeah, and look, it's a defense that lost Frankie Louvu, right?
Mm-hmm.
And longs for the days of Luke Kuechly and Shaq Thompson, at the second level. And
John Beeson, let's go.
Yeah, sure, let's go, line it up. That would certainly make sense. Your next one though is the one that really caught, raised my eyebrows a little bit and got me excited.
Yep. So the next one, probably the earliest you've seen Mike Green from Marshall go. And the tape is really good. The production is excellent. Goes down to the Senior Bowl, had a really, really good week down there before he got his Senior Bowl diploma and graduated in the middle of the week. But Kellen Moore being the coach there, my thought was Well, what did he just witness up close and personal?
Yeah.
He witnessed defensive destruction
Yep.
based off of defensive line play. So it feels like D-line's a way they could go there. Now, Mykel Williams is an interesting one. I wouldn't sleep on that pick there, but this gives them a proven pass rusher with production.
Yeah, I like that. And again, that also feels like a place where, again, with Kellen's influence and with his background, again, seeing what worked and what won. It wasn't just D-line, right? It was O-line too. And do you feel good enough about Trevor Penning at right tackle, or do you feel like there's somebody in that range that could upgrade where you're at right there, knowing the issues that Ryan Ramczyk has had? And so I could see that being a piece. I'm also kind of curious, DJ, because and I know your top 50 is how you grade these players, how
Yeah.
you evaluate them if you're watching the tape. Your mock drafts are often things you're hearing, right? And so let's just go back to your top 50. You've got Mike Green, I believe, at 23. So you got James Pierce from Tennessee, a little bit ahead, and Derek Harmon from Oregon, obviously a different player, interior player. Don't know if the value's there. But when you look at Green and Pierce, let's say, what kind of rings differently about Green?
Well, that was pre-Senior Bowl too.
That's
so
right.
That's the first iteration. So we've had a chance to see Green go up against good competition and be pretty dominant. So
he's
that
probably going
helped.
to take a jump in the top.
He got a little bump. He got a little bump coming out of the Senior Bowl. That's kind of what that was. And we'll see what happens with Pierce. Teams get a chance to visit with him and see how they are with him. But he's somebody that's definitely a dynamic talent. So that's all going to shake out in the wash. But the Mike Green bump was really, we see it every year. We saw it last year. Quinion Mitchell was the guy last year who made
Senior
that,
Bowl bump.
who got the bump. So I think you'll see a nice bump there.
Teaser, another Toledo defensive player. And
how about
first
that?
32 picks.
I know. We'll get there. How about let's get to number 10, Chicago, Kelvin Banks.
Gotta have
offensive line wise. I know interior is the focus, and I know Banks played tackle. He could play inside if you needed him to, no problem. And I think he's personally an upgrade for him at tackle. But I kind of, again, I don't want to mention the Eagles 5 million times here, but it's hard not to when with what we just saw and how many of those guys on that offensive line. Becton was a tackle who moved to guard. Dickerson played center. He can play guard. He can play anywhere along the offensive line. Jurgens started at guard while he had to wait to get his. I mean, like this whole we got to be locked in. He is this and only this. Get 5 talented, versatile offensive linemen, and then get another 5.
If you get tired of mentioning the Eagles, just mention the Bucs in the COVID year. Very similar situation.
Yeah,
although not all draft picks, but I mean it's all there for you. Offensive line, defensive line.
Yeah, no question. All right, let's do 5 more, and then we'll take a break here. So 11, Will Johnson to the Niners.
Like that.
I'm curious on him because he is a tough one for me.
That's the first corner off the board.
First corner off the board, but he's not.
I guess.
But he's not
first
my
true corner.
With Travis Hunter, he's not. I actually have Barron over him as a player on my top 50. I think you're going to see some splits on Will Johnson. And the challenge is the tape was good in 23 to go along with all the traits and, production, all that stuff. This year, the tape was not good, man.
Very
it was
minimal.
very up and down.
And limited too.
Yes. So, and then I'm, maybe he'll surprise me. I'm curious to see what he runs. I do have some concerns about him deep speed wise. So, coupled with not having a lot of tape and not having a lot of great tape this year, some tackling concerns and questioning the deep speed. And maybe he goes out and surprises me, and he runs 4.4s in Indy, and he's going to go. He's going to go all the way up there. And but nonetheless, that was a fit to me with how they play in San Francisco.
But that's also a great way to look at the 40. Too, right? I mean, look, a lot of it is entertainment value for us when we get there and we're watching it and we're going through the simulcams and all that stuff on NFL Network. But for a player like that, it actually can be a real positive metric depending on where we see that long speed.
It's the corners, and I'll say this is the comment every year: corners, the 40 matters more than any other position.
Yep.
And now the overall importance of the 40 has diminished greatly because of GPS information that we have. But it's still at that position, it carries weight. So we'll see there. But I had him going to the Niners. Walter Nolan, a little bit higher than I had him, but this is Odigizua as a free agent. And so I'm like, okay, well, who's an upfield disruptor? And that's Walter Nolan. From Ole Miss, 13, Miami's got to get better along the offensive line, especially in the interior. Tyler Booker, I love him as a player. I think he's one of the safest guys out of Alabama. Membo, from Missouri going to the Colts. He could start at right tackle when Braden Smith's days are done. He can start at guard until that were to
That's a
take
great
place.
one. A great
So,
versatile piece there. Yeah.
really, really good player. And then 15, the Falcons. Why
Gotta
not?
have
Pass rusher. Got to throw a
Gotta
pass
have
rusher in
one.
there every year. They never take one, but why not? Not going to be deterred, Rhett. Going to keep trying until they eventually do.
At some point, we're going to make that thing work. And it does feel like this is a really good draft to find that match. And look, at 15, to feel like you got a good one. I mean, look at where the Rams got versed last year, right? I mean, like this is, you're going to be in a good spot right there to get a really good, impactful player off the edge to make that work for Raheem Morris.
Yeah, and by the way, on the Rams, I was talking with somebody this morning and brought up a great point on the Rams, which will, you know what, I'll put a pin in that because
we'll get them.
I'll do
coming up
that
here.
when we get to the Rams. But there's a
26.
nugget on them that I love. But I told you that was the interesting part of the draft, and that was where the thing really got going. Was there at 6 with the Raiders. So that's kind of the top part there. That's the wrap for the lead block presented by T-Mobile for Business. Football needs a network willing to go the extra yard. So do you. Go further with T-Mobile for Business. All right, let's keep it rolling here.
Yeah.
16 through 20. 16 Arizona Cardinals, Kenneth Grant. It just, to me, it's like the talent is there, and then having somebody that you can just plug right into that defense. They got some other interesting pieces there, but overall, defensively for Arizona, they were 28th third down defense, 25th in yards per carry, 28th or 26th in pressure rate. So defensively is where you focus. And I think you get a lot of help there with Kenneth Grant.
How do you view, knowing the way that that Gannon runs that defense and how they want to run it in Arizona? Like, how do you view Grant? Like, can you play him as a nose? Can you play him out? Can you move him out a little bit? And play him over the guard? Like, how do you see where he fits in there?
Well, when I look at him, one of the comps that's kind of interesting of what he can be. I know Dexter Lawrence is a name that I've mentioned before. That's what you're hoping, he could somehow get to that level. Would be incredible, would be insane. But you got somebody that I think can play the nose, can handle that. But I also think someone who you can move around on pass downs. Like if you go back to the Albert Hainsworth years when he was with Tennessee and Vanden Bosch, and they used to flip him. They used to let Vanden Bosch rush over the guard, and they would let Hainsworth rush out over the edge, where I'm just envisioning you could have some fun if you gave him a runway at 340 pounds. Yeah. I think right now he helps the run game. Right now he's your nose. He's stacking. He can take on doubles, all that stuff.
Darius Robinson starts to show up a little bit too there.
What Darius Robinson plays off him, who can really get upfield. So I think it would be a fun piece there for them to play with. Keep it going here. 17. One of my favorite players in the draft, and Jadai, I got to get it. Jadai. I'm going to figure that out before we get there. Barron from Texas. I had a fun discussion with a buddy in the league the other day about him because he was like, well, I just don't know if he could hold up outside outside a corner. I have my concerns there. And I said, well, he is a dominant nickel. Like he is outstanding in coverage. He makes a ton of plays on the football. And oh, by the way, he does not miss tackles. So then start thinking about it. And we're going to do something on this at the combine. Think about some of the teams in the tournament, some of the teams that were some of the last teams in the tournament. Yeah. Let's go with, and I know they used him differently this year, but McDuffie is at his best when he's in that nickel spot.
In the nickel spot.
On a great defense.
Yes.
Cooper DeJean on the team that just won the Super Bowl. Dominant nickel. The Ravens, when they put Hamilton and moved him down there, look how that changed their defense. He can play back at safety. He can do everything. He actually went from front to back, and their defense even got better. To me, he's someone who has that skill set to be an impact player down low. I look at Derwin James for the Chargers, a playoff team. Dominant player in that big nickel role. Whether the size, big nickel, regular nickel, whatever you have it, almost every defense has had an impact player that can play in that spot. Yeah. So I told him, this was the point that I made, is I was like, look, the rest of the league blew it on Branch and on DeJean and allowed those guys to fall in the draft and watched them take off. I can't imagine the league's going to be this dumb 3 years, 3 years in a row doing this. There's no way.
I think that's
too good.
Yep. Yep. Now this is a team. This is kind of reminds me a little bit of where Tampa was before they went to the Super Bowl. They've spent some resources now on the defensive backfield in recent drafts, right? Second rounder on DJ Turner, second rounder on Cam Taylor-Britt, third rounder on Jordan Battle. But the point is, like, you keep swinging right until you find that impactful dude.
And their nickel's gone. Hilton,
And
I think,
Mike
is a
Hilton
free
is a
agent.
free agent. Exactly.
So that's kind of the thinking.
That makes a
there.
lot of
But
sense.
again, and the other thing is defensive tackle needs to be addressed. But I think their next pick is 42. I have that right here. Their next pick for Cincinnati is 49. They can get a D tackle at 49. This draft is deep
In this draft.
spot.
Great
Yes.
point. Yeah, go get the elite corner.
So that's where I had them going. Seattle, dress the interior of the offensive line. I wish Gray Zabel could clone himself, but he takes care of one of those positions.
Somewhere up there.
State. Yeah, that's a big one for him. And then I've got McMillan, Tet McMillan from Arizona, the big wide receiver.
T-Mac, baby.
Look, he could go in the top 10 easy. But I also think there's so many teams looking to address bigs early in this draft that I think there's a chance he could slip a little bit. And that's the scenario that I ran through here. And with Tampa, with Chris Godwin, a free agent,
a little bit of Mike Evans there too, with a bigger frame. Yeah.
You get somebody that Baker likes playing with this style of receiver. And then with Denver, I gave him the joker that they apparently are wanting there. And that's a very talented tight end, Colston Levan. I almost flipped it and went Colston Levan to the Jets up there. Like if you told me Colston Levan went in the top 10, I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's one of the 10 best players in the draft.
Wow, that's interesting to me. So like that could actually end up being closer with Warren and Loveland. Obviously, still giving the nod to Warren at the first tight end.
I gave them the same grade, Red. They're
grade.
totally different stylistically.
That's right.
But that's why I did that whole tweet the other day about you've got the Gronk tree and the Kelsey tree, and there's some hybrids, but you try and say which one of these guys is it. And with Warren, you get the seam runner, keep him on the move. He's a rolling billboard down the seam. He obviously does his stuff in the run game. He's going to be more physicality after the catch than make a miss. And
the
then
Gronk tree.
The Gronk tree. And then you get Loveland from the Kelsey tree. You want to run option routes, choice routes, whip routes, get in and out. You can split him out wide, let him run routes out there, and he's going to make you miss after the catch. So
I think he's got a little more edge to him too. Like
they're stylistically as how you will use them in terms of route running are polar opposite. Right. But I do think they both have an edge to them, to your point.
Yes. Yep.
So that's what I had there. That is the top 20. Anything interesting grab your attention? Any of those?
The elevation for Zabel, I just again speaks to opportunity and taking advantage of it at the Senior Bowl. Like I just if not for the Senior Bowl, do you think we're still talking about Gray Zabel as the 18th player off the board here?
No, because I think you just wonder how he would have done against competition. You don't have to wonder anymore.
Bottom of the first, maybe top of the second, but yeah, there he goes at 18. Good for him. And the Seahawks are going to be very happy to be able to have a player like that.
All right, Rhett. It's time for Hot or Not, brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage, because this one got a little hot on the internet streets when I put this one out there. A lot of reaction on this next pick. I had the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State.
I love it. I love it. I think we've seen enough of what this offense looks like with Najee Harris, and it's not a needle mover. Yeah. And I think this moves the needle. I'm actually getting the chance, and we've talked to Spencer Danielson, his head coach, here on Move the Sticks a couple of times. I remember, listening to him as a defensive coach right before he was elevated to the interim head coach, and like understanding, all right, as a defensive guy, like when did you notice Ashton Jeanty? Like when he got to camp, like when he was like, oh, I noticed it in spring, they ripped off an 80-yard run against the number one defense, and it wasn't particularly close. And it was like, no, okay, yeah, makes sense. So like, for a guy who rushes for 2,600 yards, including the playoffs in college football, like I think you're forecasting a guy who can be a bell cow type, and just to me fits perfectly with what Pittsburgh wants. Major work ethic, major toughness, incredible dude, and a really talented player in the backfield. That's going to make a lot of sense there.
Yeah, you get all the toughness and the physicality, but then you get the home run ability. Yes. To me, it's like if the two backs that they had a baby. It gives you the Jaylen Warren juice, and it gives you the power that you have with Najee Harris all on one guy. And I just think he matches Pittsburgh beautifully. A little mini run here on running backs at Omarion Hampton going next to the Chargers. And again, thinking playmakers, not positions. and just saying, okay, they need speed, they need dynamic players offensively to surround with Ladd McConkey. And that, to me, when I stack him up, I'm like, he's the most dynamic skill player that's there at this time.
I loved watching him against Florida State. Like, I mean, the way, like, he's got some vision now too to get through there. And then when he busts out, like, not only does he have that kind of like game breaking, playmaking type of skill, but he's got some shock absorbers too. Like, there's guys coming to take kill shots on him from the side, just kind of, just kind of absorbs and continues on. That's how that's what you're talking about when you go from 12 to 32 in terms 12 yards to 32 to 52 yards in a run when you can get past that third level.
He's going to be at the combine around 225 pounds. He's going to run in the mid 4.4s, and he's going to have 6% body fat.
Come on.
You're going to start hearing a lot more. You're going to start hearing a lot more about Amari and Hampton is the point I'm making here. All right, let's keep it rolling here. The Green Bay Packers, Josh Simmons, who, if he's clean and healthy and finishes out the year, there's no chance he's there at this point in time. But he's someone that I think can be your left tackle of the future. But he can also play any of the other spots. He's really got good feet. He can bend. So had him go to Green Bay. Feels like their style of guy. The next one, I do want to spend a little time on here, and this is going to kind of wrap up our little hot or not section here, because this is another one that got a little bit of buzz on the streets here. Travion Henderson going to the Minnesota Vikings.
Wow. I mean, it's like Dalvin Cook comes back in the form of an absolute home run hitter at the running back spot, and that's, I think, what we all saw in the college football playoff, Deej, was this dude absolutely gets after it. And I would love to see what he could do. That's a pretty dang good offensive line when healthy now too. So like, he's going to have some opportunities. Like, that almost feels like an Eagles light type of running game with what Travion can do. Like, he's not Saquon, we get it, but that offensive line, maybe not quite as good as Philly, but like, again, if you're trying to find some similarities and some pathways to success, like, that feels like a great way to support whomever your quarterback is there in Minnesota this year. I really like that pairing of Travion to Minnesota, and in the style in which they run, again, in which they want to, execute run game. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Who took the division away from him last year at the end of the year?
Away from the Vikings?
Yeah.
The Detroit Lions.
Yeah. What do the Detroit Lions have at running back? What do they have an up close view to see in that one?
Yeah,
they saw what that, and by the way, back when you had Randy Moss and Chris Carter in that dynamic pass game, who did they have?
Robert Smith.
Back? Yeah, he can run a little bit, little juice. So this is a blast to the past here.
I like it.
So I love that fit. That's what got a little spicy there. But you laid out the case as well as I could have right there. I'm a big fan of that. That was this week's Hot or Not segment, brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Store more and do more with your data. Try them for free at wasabi.com. Running backs, who knew running backs would create a little buzz?
3 of them, baby.
First round. Let's finish this up here. Emeka Egbuka, he gets reunited with his college quarterback, CJ Stroud, Houston. I wrote down in there, like, to me, you have a cerebral quarterback. Now you have someone who's a cerebral receiver who he has history with, who's just a pro's pro. What did they hit? What did they hit on? They hit on Will Anderson, pro, like just a pro. CJ Stroud is a pro. Like, you're starting to build that culture. It's the image of D'Amico Ryans. That's who D'Amico Ryans was, just professional in every which way as a player and as a coach. So I love that match there with the Texans. All right, this is the one you teased us a little earlier about the Rams. Darius Alexander, big, long, rangy, athletic. If you want to have some fun, just go watch some of his cut-ups and watch some of the plays that he makes. Incredible, including a pick six. But the Rams, best young defensive line in the NFL. I feel confident saying that, just in terms of the young guys that they have, so many of them. And I had some people say, well, they already are good at defensive line. Why would they take another one? Well, my answer is, again, reference the team that just won it. You can't have enough. Keep stacking them. And this was the point that was brought up to me by a mutual friend of ours.
This is our Rams nug?
This is a Rams nug, which was where is it here? Let me find it, pull it up. It is right here. Okay. If you look at a lot of their front seven picks from the last few years, they have something in common. They were small school transfers and players who were doubted. Think about Kobe, at Richmond, Verse, Fisk, Byron Young. Byron Young came from Georgia Military. I mean, like, he worked at He just doing blue collar work.
Yeah.
And these guys and that's how they kind of play. So let's go to the MAC and let's go get another one of these angry dudes that didn't get treated properly.
I love that. I love that. That's that makes a lot of sense to me. And we saw this dude at the Senior Bowl as well and did not disappoint. Like
Oh, man.
he is a guy that fits right in with like the havoc that group wreaks on the defensive front for Chris Shula and Sean McVay. And like that is they would I mean, I do not want to be sitting around in the NFC West having to deal with that group twice a year. Let's just put that.
Now, one thing I have to confirm his age because I was told that he's a little bit older. So
yeah, he got in. I mean, his first year of college was 2019. So
yeah, so he's going to be a little bit older, which that could end up. Some teams have issues with that. That could slide him down. But as a player, I think he's in that borderline there.
But as an alternate, you would not be shocked to see an offensive lineman come off the board here for the Rams, right?
A left tackle, but it's just here's my thing, and I've got the Chiefs taking one here in a minute, but usually the tackles you get at the bottom of the first round, you leave you wanting a little bit more because it's such a premium position. It's so hard to find. They all go real high. And so you almost, in some ways, if you don't get one at the top of the first round, you almost better off just taking a flyer maybe on someone on day 2 at some point in time. It's just that's a theory and a thought that's out there. The Ravens, Shamar Stewart. Hey, what do you know? Have we ever seen them take an explosive edge rusher who, for years, we always talked about the Ravens were obsessed with production with pass rushers. That was Ozzy's thing. But then Jason Oweh, they went away from that, and Jason Oweh's been a good player for him. Shamar Stewart, again, just big, long, physical, fast. He kind of plays hard. Reminded me of a Raven-type player. Detroit, Donovan Jackson, who can slide right in and replace Zeitler, who's a free agent.
Yep.
And then Washington, Jahad Campbell. I'm curious. We'll see at the combine. I know he's played off the ball primarily, but they let him rush a little bit, and I was really intrigued by watching him rush. And then I do the background on him and figure out, oh, this guy was an edge rusher in high school. They moved him off the ball at Alabama because they had 2 first-round edge rushers.
Dallas Carter and
Dallas Turner.
Dallas Turner.
Yeah, and Will Anderson. So, I mean, that was kind of a no-brainer there in terms of just. I think it's a chess piece, an explosive, dynamic player for Dan Quinn. Matthew Golden, one of my favorites in the draft, receiver out of Texas. He goes to Buffalo. Again, they have a lot of defensive needs there in Buffalo that would lead you to believe they could go in that direction. But this one was too fun, for a team last year that defensively, I mean, again, you can go through all the different holes, but you got Amari Cooper as a free agent. I figure this is a nice one to plug in there.
If Derek Harmon were to get into the first round, could you see that as a spot for him?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Again, when I look at their defensive stuff, they were 29th in third downs last year. So getting better in that department, 24th in passing yards per game defensively.
How much longer does Von Miller want to play?
I don't know how much, if we see him this year, it would be a question. I mentioned it, teased it. Josh Conner on the other tackle goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody's going to focus on the one bad rep against Mike Green at the Senior Bowl where he got flat backed. It wasn't that bad the whole week. I'm not quite as high on him as some other people are. Yeah. But if you're desperate and watching that Super Bowl would lead you to believe they're pretty desperate to upgrade the left tackle position. Josh Connerly to me, a much better player than Sua Matia coming out of BYU, who they took. So
you've got to win there, right?
You got to upgrade. You got to upgrade. And then finally, the Philadelphia Eagles, after all this talk and bluster from yours truly about offensive line and defensive line, I'm taking a safety.
But from Georgia, so
Malachi Starks is an interesting one. He's someone that is still, he's a young player. He's played a lot of football, and he's impactful right when he got on the field there at Georgia. Oh, by the way, another Georgia Bulldog for Howie Roseman.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be even better as we go along here in his career. I think the Eagles have the luxury of drafting for 2 years from now and not having to worry about year one.
That's a great way to put it too. And I think as you put you kind of put this whole thing into context, like this simulation that you put together here speaks to the identity of this draft. Like it's a little bit of a gritty draft, right? You've got 4 interior defensive linemen going here. You've got 2 off the ball backers. You got 3 running backs and 2 tight ends, right? I mean, this feels like a big physical draft, and we're not going to see an incredible run on receivers. And maybe not even, on corners. I think there's only 3 DBs I mean, 4, depending on how we're going to classify Travis Hunter. So I think it's a really good kind of lesson to learn about where this draft class sits.
Yeah. I mean, 3 of my top 7 players are 2 tight ends and a running back.
Yeah, I know.
In the draft, like on my top 50. So that's kind of where we are. All right. There you have it, Red. This was a fun one, man. Kind of jumping into
great.
that.
Yeah, great food for thought with that mock draft. And obviously it's a little more than food for thought. I know there's some buzz in there, and there's some talk around the league in there too, which is always interesting to see how it works.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Later this week, we'll have the conference call. So I do a conference call, bunch of media folks. So we'll answer a lot of draft questions on.
Have you watched the Canadian players yet?
I have a list of Canadian. Well, I've already seen them.
You've seen Elgersma,
combine guys, yes. And then what happens is I just have Jack give me the actual names of the Canadian guys, and then I put them all my notes to the side. So this is a look inside my process. I watch everything. I've already got my top 50 reports written. Everything else is in a notebook, in terms of taking notes. So now, over the next couple of days, I've got to finish up some corners and linebackers. That's all I got left. And then I've got to take all these notes from there, and I got to pump them into the Excel sheet and condense it down. So it's like being in college, man. It's like having a final, you got your term paper that's due here coming up on Thursday. But it's fun. They pay us for this, believe it or not.
They do. It's awesome.
What a life.
Great work, man.
All right. That was fun. Again, we'll have Buck back with us. I guess we'll circle back with Bucky next week when we get him back in the mix out there at the combine. So appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.